Hello, it's Jim Hutchens for the Jerusalem Connection Spot Report for this week. There is presently a gap, a lull, if you will, in the peace efforts of Secretary of State John Kerry. They will be resumed shortly, but I want to read excerpts from a very significant article, I think, with regard to this peace efforts. It's written by Ted Bellman. Ted is an Israeli journalist. He has an email newsletter and a website entitled Isra Pundit Digest. And you do well to follow his analysis. It's very good. His recent article is entitled The Two-State Solution is Dead. Long live what? The two-state solution is dead. All that remains is for the U.S. to declare it so. Palestinian leaders and Israeli leaders have made it clear. In a speech on January 10, 2014, Palestinian Authority Chairman Mahmoud Abbas made it crystal clear that he would never abandon the right of return, Palestinians coming back to Palestine, a Palestinian state. That he would never recognize Israel as a Jewish state, and he would never make a deal unless East Jerusalem was given to the Palestinians as their capital, all of which cross Israel's red lines. Bellman goes on, peace can be achieved only when the education toward incitement and toward the destruction of Israel is stopped. There will be peace only if our security and our settlement interests are ensured. Peace will be established only if we could defend ourselves by ourselves against any threat. Then he quotes Minister of Defense Moshe Ya'alon. Ya'alon said, Mahmoud Abbas lives on our sword, namely on the protection of Israel's military forces. Once we leave Judea and Samaria, he is finished. In fact, throughout the recent months, there's been no negotiation between us and the Palestinians, but rather between us and the Americans. The only thing that can, quote, save us is that John Kerry will get the Nobel Peace Prize and leave us alone. That's true. He goes on, he says, I live and breathe the conflict with the Palestinians. I know what they think, what they want, what they really mean. He went on to say, the American security plan that was presented to us is not worth the paper it's written on. Now, Ya'alon took a lot of heat for these statements, but he is speaking truth, core truth, true truth. He was right. Netanyahu, Ya'alon, and many Israelis, though they prefer the two-state solution on their terms, in its absence, they're quite comfortable with maintaining the status quo. But not everyone embraces the status quo. They want to annex Judea and Samaria, take sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, namely the West Bank. The goal is for Judea and Samaria to be under Israeli sovereignty. It's ours, and it was acquired legally in a bloody defensive war. We must now implement the vision of the greater land of Israel. He's speaking biblically now. You don't often see this. We must now implement the vision of the greater land of Israel and begin to apply sovereignty in all of the territory. This is the vision reflecting belief in the holy precept that the land of Israel is ours. And I would say by God's covenant promise. The land of Israel is ours. We have no right to revoke this precept. It is fidelity to the ideology of the right and the religious public, which believes that this is our land. And they believe rightly so, based upon God's covenants, once again. He says we must begin gradual process of 25 years under the heading of, quote, annexation and naturalization. Caroline Glick, he quotes her here. She's a very astute observer of all things Israel. I quote her often myself. She said, the only thing that should interest us is that Judea and Samaria is Israel. She says and notes that even though the providing Palestinians with permanent residency and the right to apply for citizenship is not a perfect solution and will damage Israel on certain levels, no question about it, it is absolutely clear that it's better than establishing a Palestinian state. such a state would be the ruin of Israel. And she closes by saying, or he closes the quote from her. She says, I brief the members of the House of Representatives and the United States Senate several times every year. Each time I present this plan on Capitol Hill, the response borders on euphoria. In the United States, just as in Israel, there are millions of people who understand that the two-state solution is a disaster, an absolute disaster. They're just waiting for someone to tell them that they can abandon it. Well, for what it's worth, I say abandon it now. Don't wait. I think this represents a growing, I don't know whether it's a consensus yet or not, but a growing opinion among Israeli leaders and among the Israeli public that the two-state solution is not going to happen, and it's not going to make it. And it's a time when they're recognizing that the boundary lines that God has given by covenant promise are indeed the boundary lines that they should fight for and don't take no for an answer to. So until next week then, Od Ki Yavo Shiloh, until Messiah comes, Yivarecha Yahweh. Yahweh bless you, bless yours.